Hello everyone, and welcome back to CM50, the video edition. In this video, we'll be expanding on Unit 11 of CM50, which covers measure words. So what are measure words? Well, as mentioned in CM50 page 16, Unit 11.1, measure words are used to classify nouns into categories. Now in Chinese, we must use a measure word in between a determiner and a noun. Now, determiners were covered in the previous video, so if you've not done so already, it will be a good idea to watch that first. But that is the general rule. There must be a measure word in between a determiner and a noun. Now, we also use measure words like this in English, but to a limited extent. For example, we say a blade of grass and not a grass. Here, the determiner is a, the measure word is blade, and the noun is grass. Determiner, measure word, noun. Likewise, we say 3 loaves of bread and not 3 breads. In this instance, the determiner is the number 3, the measure word is loaves, and the noun is bread. Now, we also know that it's important to use the correct measure word. For example, if we see the sentences, a pack of birds and a flock of dogs, we know that this is incorrect and that the correct way is a flock of birds and a pack of dogs. Now, the same principles apply in Chinese, but to a greater extent. We must always use a measure word in between a determiner and a noun. This means that while it's possible to say this person in English, putting the determiner directly in front of the noun with no measure word in between, this is not the case in Chinese. And so the structure we must use is determiner, measure word, noun. Now, which measure word should be used depends on the noun itself. And the most common measure word in Chinese is ge. And this is what we saw at the end of the last video. So what is the function of ge? What is its use? It's for nouns without a special measure word of their own. And again, in the previous video, we saw an example of this. This apple, 这个苹果,这个苹果. Let's just remind ourselves of this structure. Determiner, measure word, noun. But if we go back to that example sentence, what do you notice about the English? It's just determiner and noun. This apple. But it's not possible to do this in Chinese. We cannot say 这苹果. The correct way is 这个苹果. And some more examples. That box. 那个盒子. A father. 一个父亲. Two babies. 两个婴儿. Every person. 每个人. So 个 is for nouns without a special measure word of their own. Another very common measure word is 本. Now this is for books, bound volumes, and printed matter. So for example, this book, 这本书. So not 这书, it's determiner, measure word, noun. 这本书. A Bible, 一本圣经. Another common measure word is 张, and this is for objects that have a broad, flat surface. Every table, 每张桌子. A newspaper, 一张报纸. Now it should be noted that in some cases, the same noun can have different measure words, which will change the nature of the sentence. So take a look at these two measure words, bowl, 碗, cup, 杯. Now, of course, these are also literal objects in their own right. They are nouns. However, they can also be used as measure words. For example, a bowl of water, 一碗水, or a cup of water, 一杯水. So it's the same noun, water, 水, different measure words. 碗, a bowl, 杯, cup. The same is true of these two measure words here. 节, which is the measure word for scriptures, which would ultimately translate as verse, or 段, which is a measure word for any passage of writing. 一节经文, this would be like saying a verse, or 一段经文, a passage of scripture. Let's look at a scripture. 让我们看一节经文. Let's look at a passage of scripture. 让我们看一段经文. Now let's focus on this phrase here, a passage of scripture. 一段经文. What if you want to say an interesting passage of scripture? How would we say this? 一段很有意思的经文. Now let's break it down to see what's happening here. First of all, the adjective interesting will be translated as 很有意思. So that's one way to say interested in Chinese. 很有意思. Then we use the adjective marker or descriptive marker to connect that adjective 很有意思 to the noun 经文. And what we get is 很有意思的经文, interesting scripture. Now this whole phrase 很有意思的经文 can be seen as a noun. It is a noun phrase. So then we can add it to 一段很有意思的经文, an interesting passage of scripture. And so we still follow that same structure. Determiner, measure word, noun. Determiner, 一, measure word, 段, and noun, or in this case, noun phrase, 很有意思的经文. Now, to find out more about how to modify measure words in this way, take a look at CM50, page 17, unit 11.4. And also, you will find more examples of measure words. But this has been a brief introduction to measure words, and as always, there's more to come in the following units. See you next time.